Hi, I'm Haley Rogers. I'm an author, university student, and an aspiring entrepreneur. I am ultimately dedicated to helping you become fearlessly authentic. In this podcast, I will be sharing my own insights related to authentic living through various topics such as goal setting, mindfulness, confidence, resilience, and more. Not only will I be sharing my insights, but this podcast will have a Let's Talk series featuring those who have mastered the art of authentic living. There's so much to learn about authentic living, and it is one of the most challenging qualities to hold in a world that often strives for conventionality. However, we are on a journey together to learn how we can do just that. Are you ready? Hey everyone, welcome back to the See Me Show. I'm so excited to be kicking off the Let's Talk series, and on today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce you to an incredible and fierce young woman, Ampai Thammachack. In this episode, Ampai and I are going to discuss the importance of mental health and how her journey led her to initiating positive change. Mental health is an indispensable component of living a fearlessly authentic life, as your mental health affects everything that you do. Ampai, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hello. Hi, Haley. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I am such a huge fan of yours.
By the time Ampai was 19 years old, she had already founded two nonprofit organizations, Step Above Stigma and Glass Slipper Organization. I was fortunate to become a part of Step Above Stigma my second year of university, and am now the current co-president. After becoming a part of Step Above Stigma, I've been able to watch Ampai over the past few years grow into the even more empowering woman she is today. She also recently co-founded a new company called Love of Lifted. I was fortunate to be able to write about Ampai's story in my book, See Me, but I also knew that she had to be on my podcast because her story will show you just how one can take their adversities and use them to enact positive change. So Ampai, can you share with our listeners more about your story?
First of all, for all of the viewers and just everyone, you are an incredible co-president, and I'm so thankful to have you. So, to my story, I'm from a small town called Bedford in Nova Scotia. My household was a lot of fun when I was really little. My dad is the hardest working man I know. He's from Laos, a smaller country between Vietnam and Thailand, and escaped the Vietnam War when he was only 16 years old. He ran away from home by stowing away on army trucks and living in refugee camps throughout Europe without a dollar to his name for about 14 years. However, he was eventually sponsored to come to Canada, amazingly learned how to speak English at the age of 30, and made his Canadian dream come true. On the other hand, my mom is the most awesome, hippie, anarchist, badass mom ever. She is the daughter of Duncan Rapier, the millionaire business mogul. My grandpa was one of the most brilliant men. He had it all. Islands, banks, casinos, and hotels, until he got moved into a very bad situation involving money laundering, something my mom still won't tell me about fully, and ended up getting arrested. After that, their home was taken by the FBI, and they went completely broke. My grandpa ended up spending a long time in jail. During that time, my mom quit college because of the stress her family was under, which put a stop to her dreams. Her and my grandma then ended up moving to the projects and government housing in Florida. However, now at the age of 54, she is a first-year student at Dalhousie University in the transition year program, and I'm so proud of her. One of the hardest things for me, and sort of where my mental health journey began, was when I was growing up, I was the only person without white skin that I knew. I constantly was teased for having a stupid name or having an afro or having a big nose. And when you're a little kid, that really hurts. It was at that age, I just didn't understand what a norm of beauty was. And I didn't know that it was beautiful to be different. I also had a really hard time just understanding who I was because I didn't have any role models that were Black or Asian or anyone outside of my family to show me how strong I was because of who I came from. But yeah, almost every night when I was young, I would pray to become someone else because I thought that was the only chance to have an opportunity to succeed in life. Not soon after, I became a ballerina and was dancing with the National Ballet of Canada. It was also hard because I'm not a short or super, super skinny little thing. All bodies are beautiful, but my body just wasn't right for ballet, and it was hard getting rejected from something that you love so much, not because of your skill, but just because of something you can't control. It was also around that time that my family started to fall apart. It was the recession when we lost every single dollar of our name. My parents had to spend anything that they had saved for me in my own personal bank accounts and to save for me to go to college to keep our house, and the fighting started. When I was younger, there wasn't a single day when windows weren't smashed and furniture wasn't thrown and tears weren't shed. It was a horrible environment to develop in, and it really made me question the meaning of family and love. It still does to this day. Eventually, my dad came into the room crying, and he gave my brother and I a hug and took off for a year back to Laos, leaving my mom to take care of us. I love my dad so much, and looking back, he will always be the most loving and amazing father ever, and I don't blame him for needing to do what he needed to do, but it really messed me up for quite a while. For the next 4 years, my mom talked about her own personal mental health struggles, and I really saw how much she suffered every day. But looking back, it was the loving care that my parents gave me that made everything worth it when we didn't really have many material things. Soon after, my dad came back and he started paying child support. The divorce finally came to a close and things started to look up. But eventually, along with a lot of other really difficult things in high school, I started to break down and finally told my guidance counselor that I didn't want to live anymore. As a mandated reporter, he referred me to a social worker where I began to get the counseling and help I needed. But it definitely wasn't as fast or as often as it should have been. Regardless, getting this help really helped me get back on my feet and turn me into the person that I always wanted to be. I always think that I worked hard, but I feel like I usually worked hard for the wrong reasons. I usually worked hard because I felt like people thought I was stupid because I was Black or Asian, and that I had to work extremely hard to prove them wrong. And getting counseling really helped me readjust and understand that I have more value beyond what history written by the victors had told me. Since then, I have grown in a lot of ways that I didn't think I would have if I didn't go through what I did. I was fortunate to be able to apply to over 100 scholarships and was able to earn the money I needed, just under $100,000 to attend school, just in scholarships, and was able to make my dreams come true of going to Queen's, which was still one of the best things that has ever happened to me. But after going through everything I had, I wanted to do something that could make positive change and spread the message that I wish I had known a lot earlier. And that is why I founded Step Above Stigma. With Step Above Stigma, our goal is to raise money for mental health initiatives, shorten wait times, and advocate for mental health awareness. One of the biggest lessons that I learned is that everyone has mental health. It is a huge deal, and that not everyone knows how to best handle their mental health, but that it does dictate everything that you do, and that if you don't take care of it, or if you're not in a place to be able to take care of it, we need systems in place that will help do that for us. Around the same time, in my grade 12 year, I got the idea for the Glass Slipper organization, and through the Glass Slipper organization, we've been able to give away over 700 dresses to girls in need. After founding these organizations, I felt very positive and fulfilled, but the issues never stopped. I constantly have to remind myself that I am worthy and that I can do it, but almost always appear confident and strong on the outside. It's pretty weird because I do think that when it comes down to it, I am confident and I do love myself, but the negative thoughts, they never stop creeping in here and there, but it's just about how I've learned how to handle that and best manage it going forward.
I just love how you've been able to take your adversities and use them to catalyze change. And I also love how you've revealed that although you are confident and you have been able to achieve these things, you still struggle with it. And I think it's important to be open about those things, because I was even thinking about it the other day. Like, I've been achieving a lot, but I still have bad days. I think being transparent about that and being open about your stories is so important. So that kind of leads me into asking you this. How has sharing your story with your battles with mental health impacted your life? What is the importance of storytelling?
Telling my story has impacted my life in a lot of positive ways. Of course, you always receive one or two people that see fault in you for whatever reason, and honestly, that's okay. But for the most part, it's just been extremely positive. It's helped me get closer to a lot of loved ones and friends and family, because once you open up, other people feel more comfortable to open up to you, and other people feel more comfortable about accepting themselves and accepting the things that they've went through as well. Because we've all been through stuff. We all have there's skeletons in our closet. We all have stuff that we wish didn't happen but did. And so I find that when one person is vulnerable and one person is open and one person is able to tell their story, then that just opens the gates and makes it okay for everybody else to realize that what they went through and what they overcame is okay too. To the second part of your question, I think that storytelling is crucial. In our evolutionary biology class, I remember I learned about how storytelling was one of the things that brought the earliest caveman communities together, because it's the way you communicate. It's the best way to get a message across. And I think that if you are a good storyteller, you'll be able to make so much more impact. And if you're able to summarize your story in a way that you do feel comfortable in telling to other people, then that can really help make a difference.
Yeah, storytelling for me is so essential for my mental health. Like my mental health was in a really bad state, but then I started to become aware that people were coming out about their own mental health struggles, including you. And not only that, but how they use these struggles to create and make a difference in the lives of other people. And that's why I think storytelling is so essential to not only reveal also the parts that are good, but also reveal more so the struggles and challenges, because everyone is always constantly making assumptions about other people when in reality they don't know the story. And when we actually share those stories, it also shows that we're not alone, and we can all become more authentic in the way we go about living our lives and coping with our mental health. So I want to ask you, how does our mental health play a role in living an authentic life?
I think that mental health has everything to do with living an authentic life, but it is a very complicated thing because, of course, with mental health, a lot of the times, sometimes you don't yourself even know what you're experiencing because you haven't been able to take the time to sort it out, because you haven't been able to have the time to sort it out. And a lot of the times with mental health, you also, you don't want to really revisit the pain because it's too much. And when the pain is too much to revisit and to think about, it also manifests in yourself in ways that you might not expect, which can be really negative. But at the same time, one should never be pressured to open up about things that they're not ready to open up about. So it can become hard when, you're moving through life and you have a lot of things that are weighing on you that you don't want to reveal to yourself or others because it's just too much. And so it becomes hard to really know who you are and really know exactly who you want to be when there's a lot of things that you haven't been able to work out with yourself for good reason. So I think that mental health has so much to do with living your authentic life, but I think that a lot of it also comes down to the pain that you've felt, the trauma that you've been through, and how that has manifested within who you are as a person at the point that we're talking about. On the flip side, I also think that if you are experiencing something, or if there are things that you aren't ready to talk about, that sometimes being transparent about that in itself can be really authentic. And sometimes even just saying, there's stuff that I've been through, there's stuff that makes me who I am today that I'm not ready to talk about, is very real, because that's something that a lot of people go through. But I think when it comes to authenticity, it also just comes to transparency. And a lot of the times, if you don't want to be transparent as well, that's okay. But when it comes to your mental health, no matter how you're feeling, I think that authenticity comes with transparency, which then comes with vulnerability, and then comes with being able to relate to other people even better.
So we've been discussing how everyone has mental health and how liberating and fulfilling it can be for somebody to open up about their own story, so that not only that they can feel supported by the mental health community, but also open a door for someone else to share theirs. While we all have mental health, it's also important to recognize how we all experience mental health differently, which ties into this concept of intersectionality. By becoming aware of intersectionality, we can acknowledge how mental health is experienced differently in terms of race, gender, and class. So I want to ask you, what is your take on this?
Yes, that is such an important question. It always has been, but now more than ever, thankfully, and out of complete necessity, the voices of the Black community and people of color are being amplified in ways they never have been before, and I'm so happy about that. But when it comes down to intersectionality, it also comes down to social determinants of health. And after completing quite a few classes along with my own personal research and lived experience, again, I'm not a professional in this space at all, but when you're talking about social determinants of health, if you're struggling with basic human needs like housing, like food insecurity, like being discriminated against, your mental health is going to suffer. And it is a fact that all mental health cannot matter until Black mental health matters. And I'll speak on the Black community and Asian communities most because I am half Black and half Asian. And when it comes down to my own personal lived experience, I know for a fact that my mental health has suffered quite a bit because of my identity and the things that I've experienced. This past week has been really difficult for me, and I think that it has been this way because we're finally seeing people say the things and hear the things that myself and so many of my friends and family have been screaming for years and centuries, and it's finally getting heard. And I was out of commission all week because I just felt furious. I was sad. I was relieved, and I felt empowered, and I was just so confused because my whole life I always felt like I fit in everywhere and nowhere at the same time because nobody looked like me, nobody came from where I came from, and a lot of people didn't understand the things I experienced. On a day-to-day basis, I hear things like, just talking about your physical appearance and making it like a joke, saying that I speak well, so I act white, or I'm the whitest Black person you know. And for my whole life, it always felt weird to hear things like that. And I knew that no one said anything out of malice, but it still hurt every single time I heard it because it's like, okay, well, there's Black people in all sorts of jobs and all sorts of professions. And even if you're not, a lawyer or a doctor, that doesn't matter. You still have so much value and you're still amazing. And it's just really frustrating to know that people equate Blackness to being uneducated and to being stupid or slow or lazy. And that's just not the case. That's from stereotypes, from racist portrayals throughout history. And that's still stuff that I get every single day. I've been told that I couldn't enter the kin building once because my prof was scared that I was going to steal without even knowing who I was. I've been called the N-word and told to leave before. I've been through quite a few different racist experiences, and this last week just made my mental health crash because it made me think of all the things that I went through. And then, of course, more than anything, it just angers me to no end to know how much Black people all over the world suffer with their mental health because of systemic injustices and because we're treated so unfairly because we live in a system that was not designed to protect us. We live in a system that was not designed for us to have good mental health. So how is it possible for us to get ahead, and how is it possible to succeed when you're assumed that you're dangerous and you're going to get killed for doing something that you should never even be questioned about in the first place? And so it's a long rant, but there's so much I want to say. But back to mental health, it's just unfair, and I think that we have to change the system if we want to give everyone an equal chance at having good mental health.
In light of everything that has gone on these past few weeks regarding the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm really glad you were able to discuss this and your experience with it because as someone of privilege, I can fully admit to the fact that I am uneducated and it hadn't occurred to me how much racial trauma could impact mental health. As I've continued to educate myself, I see how much mental health battles are experienced completely different in the Black community, and just, overall way of life is experienced differently. So becoming an ally and advocating is so important right now, specifically for the Black community, but I want to know, generally, why mental health advocacy is so important, and perhaps you could further discuss why allyship and advocating for Black mental health is also so important.
First of all, I want to say that I am very thankful for people like you who have been going across this the right way by talking about how maybe you don't know very much about this, but that you care, and that you're here to listen, and that you're here to learn, and that you're here to be an advocate, and that you're here to be an ally, because I think right now we're seeing a lot of performative allyship, and we're worried about, people that are saying they care but don't care. And I think that when you're ready to listen and when you're ready to learn more and when you're trying to find ways to actively educate yourself, then that's when you become an ally and that's when you become an advocate. When we're talking about advocacy, I think it's important that you're an advocate. It doesn't matter if you're a child. It doesn't matter if you're old or young. If you're the Prime Minister of Canada, you have to be an advocate. If you enjoy the better things in life, or if you want others to enjoy the better things in life, you should be an advocate, because that is the best way to bring about change. And I think when people think of the word advocate, you often think of people doing public speeches or marching. But I think the beautiful thing about advocacy is that it can be done in so many different ways. When we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement in particular, you can be an advocate online. You can go to the marches. You can be out there calling lawmakers. You can be challenging the police by giving them a call and letting them know that them not carrying the investigation further is not okay. And there's so many ways you can do it, which I think is the beauty of it, because obviously not everyone's comfortable with everything, and I think that that's okay. But when it comes to the Black Lives Matter in particular, again, I think that being an advocate isn't optional. I think that if you aren't actively anti-racist and if you aren't actively standing up to this, then you're a part of the problem, and you need to take a good look at yourself and figure out why you're not ready to either talk about your privilege or why you're not actively out there fighting for basic human rights. It's hard not to get upset, and I try really hard to keep my composure because there's a lot of people around me that are silent. There's a lot of people that I considered friends that haven't done anything about this, and honestly, they're cut. I don't need friends that don't see the rights of other people as the rights of us all, and I just think it's really unfair that some people are able to just kind of turn a blind eye or turn off their phone because it's too much for them. But on a more positive note, for those who have been doing what you're doing and for those who have been trying to actively challenge their relatives, to actively challenge the systems and to stand alongside the Black community, I think that that is what we need, and that we all need to be advocates in this time if we actually want to see change come of this week, because it has to stop. It's not an option anymore, and I think that this momentum has to continue, and it's only going to continue for all advocates.
So I was actually just going to ask you, how can one become a mental health advocate? But I think you summarized this perfectly in your previous answer. It doesn't really matter how you show up. It's a matter of showing up. You can advocate in so many different ways, which is the beautiful thing about advocacy. But right now, it's our responsibility to show up for the Black Lives Matter movement. It shouldn't be an either-or option. And obviously, those who are choosing not to show up, that's the whole root of the problem here. But more specifically, to just focus more on the mental health component of this conversation, I just want to ask you, how can we break down the stigma associated with mental health?
Yeah, so I think that it's really important to recognize that breaking down the stigma is something that happens at so many different levels in so many different ways. If you're a student, obviously you can get involved with different groups. You can join different ways to educate yourself on the matter and just to learn more, which is always a great thing. But I think that the most important work with breaking down the stigma is what happens on the one hand at the federal level with policy and laws, or even at the municipal level with creating safe spaces for individuals and obviously creating funding for mental health, because it's currently not even included in primary healthcare, which I think is absolutely absurd. But on the other hand, at the complete other end of the spectrum, I think the most important work when it comes to breaking down the stigma is learning about yourself and learning about others and mental health research and understanding what the signs might be when a friend of yours or a family member is struggling, so that you can know how to properly check in on people and make sure that people are working through things okay, and just learning how to be a support. I think that being a supportive person, whether you're a leader, whether you are a student, whether you're in any position whatsoever, is some of the most valuable stuff you can ever learn, and that learning how to be a good listener and learning how to support well when you think someone might be in pain or someone might be in a difficult situation is absolutely crucial to learning how to break down the stigma. Because if you're able to ask those questions and if you're able to really get into those situations, then you're going to be breaking down the stigma by just opening up the conversation and just starting to talk about it.
I think another component of ending the stigma associated with mental health is initiating self-care practices. Like, we have to take care of ourselves, but to also encourage others to create healthy habits that allow them to stay mentally healthy. So I just want to ask you, as we conclude this episode, what advice would you give to others who are struggling with their own mental health? Do you have any essential self-care tips?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I went through it with myself, and it was hard to try and figure out exactly what works for me and what helps. So I think the thing about mental health, that's great, is that we're all different, but of course it's also a challenge, because what works for someone isn't going to work for someone else. For me personally, and as a pretty wide blanket statement, I will say that reaching out to get help, even if you are scared that what you're feeling is embarrassing or you feel like it's not okay to feel the way you feel, it's always the right thing to do in some way, shape, or form at some point, because letting those feelings out and saying what you need to say to someone that you trust and someone that's going to keep it under wraps is some of the best catharsis I've ever experienced. Generally, I would say that services like Good to Talk are everything. I have used Good to Talk on so many occasions when I was just overwhelmed, I was angry, I was feeling any sort of negative thing with my mental health, and I would call in or I'd text, and they call you and they're able to talk to you right away, or they'll text you back right away, and it's confidential and it's free 24/7. They have helped me in ways that I can barely even say, and it's just so nice to know that they're there, because obviously it's really hard to get mental health care because you can't go see a counselor at just any point in the day. So Good to Talk, incredible. When it comes to self-care, yeah, like you said, Haley, it's so important. For me personally, journaling is so helpful. It's something that's hard to kind of get over the hump with, because you're just like tired and you're too tired to write or whatever, and you just either that or you don't really want to admit that you're feeling the way that you're feeling, so it's kind of hard to get it onto paper. But just writing those words down and getting them out of my head and onto paper, I almost get a physical sensation that my head is just less cloudy because the words have been removed from my head. They're on the paper, so I don't need to twirl them around in my head anymore. And for me, that's just been super, super helpful. So I would definitely recommend journaling. As a kin student, it's also my duty for sure, and also something personal to say that physical activity is everything. And again, it's one of those things that's hard to get into, but that physiologically, you just need to exercise. As humans, we were made to exercise. If you don't exercise, your mental health will suffer, and it's just something that you definitely need to do, along with making sure that your diet is okay, because when you're going through mental health struggles, oftentimes it's hard to look after your vitals. It's hard to make sure you're getting enough sleep, and it's hard to make sure you're eating a proper diet. But I think that that is just so crucial to making sure that you have good mental health. On a more fun note, I love to dance, and so if ever I'm feeling okay with it, usually my tell, and my friends and loved ones know this, is that if I'm sad, I'm not dancing, and if I'm happy, I am dancing. So just find those little quirky things here and there that work for you. Like, I'm just usually twerking in my bedroom mirror, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just little things here and there. And also cooking is so satisfying, and that also obviously roots back way back to the cavemen, but it's just nice to create something and obviously eat something delicious, which is always great.
So today we've talked about mental health. Mental health is something we all have, and by sharing our stories with mental health, it facilitates a community of authentic living, and to also just know that you're not alone. Additionally, it's important to note, especially during this time and ongoing, mental health is experienced differently in terms of race, gender, and class, and that it's so essential to understand this notion and support the Black community whose mental health has been affected by racial injustices. Ampai has shown you how you can become an advocate and has provided amazing insights in terms of ending the stigma and ensuring self-care. Ampai, thank you so much for this amazing discussion, but before this episode comes to a close, I want to ask you where our listeners can find you and connect with you.
Aw, thank you so much for a great chat. Always just so much love for you, Haley. If you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram at Ampai, Ampai, Melody. I'm the only Ampai around, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. I'm also on Facebook at Ampai Thammachack. A hard one again, but again, the only Ampai Thammachack you'll find, so it shouldn't be too bad, and I hope to connect with you guys. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you so much, Ampai, and for everyone who listened to this episode. See you next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the See Me Show. I am so grateful and excited to be on this journey with you to embrace the magic of authentic living. It would mean the world to me if you could review and subscribe to the show. Even better, if you could screenshot this episode and share it on your Instagram story, I would be incredibly grateful. Whether you're a new listener or an active subscriber, I want you to know that you deserve to be fearlessly authentic. See you next time.